Hey everybody, Smiles here at Pokemon VGC Nationals 2014 here in Indianapolis. Trainers from all over the nation have gathered here to prove that they're the very best like no one ever was. We have now moved past Swiss rounds to the top cut, where the top 32 players in the Masters division will face each other off in best 2 out of 3 elimination matches. So our first match has Helen versus Steven. Helen has a Charizard, a Heliolisk, Greninja, Trevenant, Slowbro, and Mienshao, while Steven has a Charizard, Greninja, Venusaur, Azumarill, Conkeldurr, and Lucario. Steven will be the player that will be the player he'll be the player 3DS. So, you know, a really interesting thing about both of these players' teams is that Charizard has the opportunity to Mega Evolve either into Mega Charizard X or Mega Charizard Y, depending on this Mega Stone it's holding. And both players also have a Greninja. So it'll be interesting to see if Steven and Helen decide to use both Charizard and Greninja at the same time. That'll be an interesting matchup for sure. Another really cool thing about Helen's team is that Helen uses Heliolisk, which isn't really a very common Pokemon that you see on teams, but it definitely has its advantages, especially with Talonflame running around, and Heliolisk having a possibility of 3 different abilities that work well based on whichever weather you pick. Dry Skin works well in the rain thanks to being able to absorb water attacks as well as recover its HP with rain. Solo Power works great in the sunlight, allowing it to power up its special attack by 2 times, but at the same time lowering its HP down 10% every turn. And Sand Veil, allowing Heliolisk to have higher evasion in sand as well as not taking damage from Sandstorm. Alright, so both players have decided on their Pokemon and go into battle. Alright, so let's just wait for the game to load right here, and Helen is issuing a challenge, and she is going to go ahead and send out her Pokemon. Here comes Helen with both Heliolisk and Charizard, while Steven goes ahead and sends out Lucario and Greninja. You know, this is a really interesting lead right here. We have Lucario, who's super effective against Heliolisk, who's super effective against Greninja, who's super effective against Charizard, who's super effective against Lucario. So it's an interesting lead right here. Both players have to be very cautious. They both have an advantage, but also a disadvantage against one another. And I really believe that it's the first turn really sets the pace for the rest of the game, and really can get the momentum going. A lot of players can lose right in the first turn with a wrong move or prediction. So they both have to think about this move carefully. So, Chana's thinking about it. Here comes Lucario. He's going to return right back to the Pokeball, hopefully avoiding Charizard's Fire-type attacks. Here comes Azumarill. And Charizard activates its Mega Stone to become Mega Charizard Y, bringing the harsh sunlight with it, thanks to its Drought ability. The nice thing about Charizard's Drought ability is that it allows Charizard to not only power up its own Fire-type attacks for 5 turns, but also weaken itself, take away Water's power, which is a huge weakness. Heliolisk goes for that Thunderbolt, clearly knocks out Greninja. He is unable to survive that hit, and Heliolisk takes some damage with Life Orb. Here comes Charizard with Heat Wave, and it's not very effective on Azumarill, but it took a considerable amount of damage from Azumarill, a little bit less than half. I mean, for a not very effective attack, that is very powerful indeed. Helen takes a strong lead at the beginning with knocking out one of Steven's Pokemon, and Steven goes ahead and sends out Venusaur. This is a very interesting lead so far. Will Helen be able to keep up this lead? Well, it really depends on how well Steven can navigate through this. Alright, so Azumarill decides to protect itself this turn. Very smart move on his part. Wants to make sure Azumarill doesn't take damage. Here comes Venusaur with Sleep Powder, putting Charizard to sleep. Oof, that might not be good for Helen. Sleeping Charizard is a non-attacking Charizard. Here comes Volt Switch from Heliolisk. Azumarill, though, protects itself, and Charizard is unable to make a move due to sleep. The first turn Steven was unable to make a move. Second turn, Helen was unable to make a move. But things are working. Helen has the lead right now, but maybe that sleep would help change, turn the tables and change momentum to Steven's side. So we'll have to see if he can keep this up. Alright, so here comes Azumarill with Aqua Jet. Hits Charizard, but unfortunately it doesn't do as much damage as he would like. Here comes Venusaur with Sludge Bomb. It takes down Heliolisk down to a little bit of HP, and Heliolisk gets poisoned. Here comes Heliolisk with Volt Switch. Clear knockout. Azumarill is unable to survive the hit, is knocked out and sent back to the Pokeball. But Heliolisk, taking damage from Life Orb, is also knocked out. And Charizard is still unable to move, is fast asleep. Yeah, definitely a big turn for Steven right there. Now, Helen has 3 Pokemon with Steven having 2. We know for a fact that Steven's next Pokemon is Lucario, but we have no idea what Helen's going to send out. Here comes Trevenant, and Steven goes ahead and sends out his Lucario. You know, the really interesting thing about Trevenant is that it has this ability called Harvest. Now, Harvest allows Trevenant to recycle its berry after he uses it about 50% of the time. But thanks to the harsh sunlight, Harvest activates 100% of the time. This could definitely be problematic for Steven if Trevenant is very bulky and can take a lot of Steven's attacks. This is very helpful for Helen, especially with that sleeping Charizard though. She needs to wake him up as fast as possible. Charizard's got to wake up because if, you know, that sleeping Pokemon is definitely troublesome. So, alright, both players are going to choose their moves. Here comes Lucario, Mega Evolving into Mega Lucario. Ah! He gets that Mega Stone, he's going at it. Trevenant decides to protect itself, definitely trying to take a more conservative route. Very smart move on its part. Here comes Venusaur with Sludge Bomb. Goes after Charizard and does a pretty considerable amount of damage. Here comes Lucario with Flash Cannon, aims also at Charizard. It's not very effective, but just enough to knock out Charizard, and he is unable to survive and goes right back to the Pokeball. Wow, that was a pretty big move on Steven's part, you know, going after Charizard instead of Trevenant. Here comes Helen sending out her Slowbro, which is a very interesting Pokemon here. You know, you have Slowbro, who is super effective against Venusaur with its Psychic attacks. Venusaur is super effective with its Grass-type attacks. So it'll be interesting to see how these Pokemon play against each other. So here comes Venusaur with Giga Drain, going after that Slowbro, taking about half of its HP. Here comes Lucario with Flash Cannon, aiming straight at Trevenant. Trevenant goes ahead and eats its Citrus Berry, restoring its HP. And Trevenant's going to go with that Will-O-Wisp. Going to burn up Lucario, hopefully trying to take it down, kind of, you know, lower its offensives and whittle it down. Here comes Slowbro with Psychic. It's super effective, and oh my gosh, Venusaur survives with 10 HP left, hanging on by the skin of his teeth. Steven was very lucky on that hit. The sunlight goes away and Lucario takes damage from its burn, but wow, that was that was pretty luck on Steven's part. He's probably has a sigh of relief right there. So here comes Lucario with Flash Cannon, going after Trevenant, clearly knocking it out. Trevenant goes back to this Pokeball, and Venusaur goes in with Giga Drain, also knocking out Slowbro, taking on the first round. Congratulations to Steven. They shake hands and get ready for round 2. And yeah, so Steven takes away round 1, and both trainers get ready for round 2.